Let's check to see what's making headlines in our Across Africa report. Officials in northern Niger say dozens of migrants apparently died of thirst while attempting to cross the Sahara Desert 2 weeks ago. 19 survivors of the tragedy told authorities they were headed to the Algerian border when their truck broke down, leaving them stranded without water. The road they were on is used by human traffickers to take people to North Africa, where they eventually board boats to Europe. And hundreds of police protested outside the Ministry of Interior in Tunis Monday, demanding more money to fight against terrorist groups. Their unions called for the demonstrations after 6 policemen died in clashes last week. And authorities in Britain say a self-styled Kenyan preacher who claimed to use prayer to help infertile couples conceive has been charged with 3 counts of rape. One of the assault charges involves a 14-year-old girl. The 61-year-old evangelist is scheduled to appear in court next month. International observers describe Madagascar's weakened presidential elections as free, peaceful, and transparent, despite organizational hiccups that kept some voters from casting their ballots. Election results trickled in and suggested a possible runoff between the deposed ex-president and a former finance minister. And that is the Arise News Africa report, but we continue now with contributor Frankie Edozien, who has come to talk about some headlines that are happening across the continent. Hey, Frankie, good to see you.
Good evening.
Hey, how are you?
How are we?
Doing good. So let's start off with this outrage by the ANC because of Tokyo, and is it Setwale or Sewale?
Sewale.
Sewale. There was
but you say Setwale, I say Sewale.
Yeah, let's not call the whole thing off. He was on a terrorist list.
Yes, and like many members of the African National Congress, many years ago have been on the terrorist watch list. Unfortunately, this is a guy who is a member of the FIFA, the world governing body of soccer. He is a diamond merchant. He is one of the richest people in South Africa. He has received the French Legion d'Honneur. He has invested not only in American companies, but in African countries. So he's very well known. And up until recently, he was a cabinet member of the South African government. He was stopped at JFK because his name was on a terror watch list. His name had actually been on the watch list since 2002, but way back when, he was given a reprieve of 10 years. And I guess we're now in 2013, 2014. You know, somehow or the other, his name was back on there. So not just the ANC is asking for an apology, but South Africans in general are really ticked off, especially South Africans of color, because of what this says.
And you can imagine that they would be. I would understand it completely. And I was surprised to find out in the reading that you provided that Nelson Mandela's name was on there until just
2008. What an embarrassment, right? 2000. I mean, the Madiba himself, after all he had been through, was on a terror watch list for so long. But we do know that, you know, for a long time, the United States was in lockstep with Great Britain and apartheid South Africa. It took a long time for people to recognize the ANC as not just a group that was trying to overthrow a government, but was trying to bring about change. And Tokyo Sewale, even though he has had this issue over the weekend, he's not taking it lightly. He's told his lawyers to contact the U.S. government to see what they can do in our court system. It is unfortunate that 2013, someone as high profile as this, who is African, has to go through this at our airports, but there is a glitch somewhere where we don't recognize names that we should.
Well, we have to just hope that it was a terrible oversight. Any response yet from the U.S. government?
The U.S. government says they have read the media reports. They know what is happening, but they have so far not officially said anything like they're going to take him off the watch list or they're not. One U.S. diplomat, former diplomat, did say that it's very difficult to get people off the watch list. It takes a long time, and that may be why some people have fallen through the cracks. But for the ANC, they are saying if someone like Tokyo Sewale, with all of his worldwide recognition, this can happen to them. What does that mean for the lesser-known members of the ANC who are going about their business and are trying to do the people's work in America?
Yeah, indeed.
For the business community, it's pretty sad because we want people like that to come here and do business in New York. We don't want to drive them away.
And speaking of offenses, there was another offense. It seems that our good Senator Ted Cruz from Texas has made a very provocative statement. He calls it a joke, but this is what he says. He says, "You may have noticed that all the Nigerian email scammers have become a lot less active lately. They all have been hired to run the Obamacare website." Now, I had a little commentary earlier in the show that said should have known better.
More than should have known better. Can you imagine? I mean, you know, Nigeria right now, Nigeria and parts of West Africa, where, yes, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 30 years ago, whatever it was, this email scams did originate. But right now on the west coast of Africa, particularly in Lagos, that is Silicon Alley. There's a lot going on in technology. A lot of the people who are working there are doing great stuff. Google and all the tech companies are in Nigeria and West Africa. So for Ted Cruz to say this is really just like an embarrassment. But you know what's even worse is that people think of Nigeria today and they think of the split within the country. But when a nation is attacked, its people do come together. So Nigerian Christians, Nigerian Muslims, Nigerian atheists, everyone's upset at Ted Cruz. And there are thousands and thousands of Nigerian citizens who are also American citizens in Texas. Texas is a hub for Nigerians. This is where they go to work when they first come to America. And many of them who stayed have had children there, and they vote. Mm-hmm. And so this is not going to end with the ambassador demanding an apology. Nigerian ambassador has demanded an apology, and usually they try not to meddle with American domestic affairs, but this was one slap too many.
I wonder if they won't get that
could
apology.
Not resist that. They just had to say something because so many people were offended.
We will see. We will see. And then the last story that you came to talk about is really very interesting, having to do with the Maasai tribe and a potential lawsuit.
Well, you know, these are people who have held on to their traditional wares for a long time, their handicrafts and the way they look. Most people recognize them in East Africa, in Kenya and in Tanzania because they wear red, they have beautiful jewelry, but everybody from Louis Vuitton to Ralph Lauren to Range Rover has used Maasai imagery to sell goods and services. And guess how much of that has trickled down to East Africa? As little as possible, perhaps even
perhaps
nothing.
None.
Yes, so there is a group of people, which is very interesting because this has been supported by the U.S. Patent Office, who has given them a grant to go after these companies and try to get some compensation. It is a long shot legally, but what it means is that people would think twice before they use Maasai imagery. And if they're going to do that, some friendly companies, they can now sort of bring back some of that money home. The Maasai people they're used to visitors coming to take pictures of them, but now they feel like when people come, they're going to take pictures of them and then use that to sell cars or pens or leather goods, and nothing will go back to them. So we'll see. What we do know that here in America, the Navajo Nation has succeeded in blocking people from using their names and imagery. So there is some precedent here. In Australia, the Aborigines as well, they have succeeded in getting people to not use their name recklessly. We'll see what happens with the Maasai.
That'd be very interesting. It's a cause worth pursuing. All right, Frankie, thank you so much.
Thank you, Debbie.
See you again soon.
All righty.
Thank you very much for watching Arise America. Have a great evening. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.